If you clicked on this video, chances are it's because you take an interest in Fracture Sounds' sample libraries. Good choice. You clearly have excellent taste in sample instruments that are immaculately recorded, programmed, and presented. If you've been around for a while, or perhaps came here from the mailing list, you'll know Fracture Sounds has a blueprint series of instruments, which are free to download and have been quite popular over the years. They're a great set of tools for both composers getting started on their musical production journeys and seasoned composers alike. But let's say you're ready to take the next step and pick up your first fully fledged sample library. Where do you start? In this video, I'm going to be talking about my process when it comes to buying virtual instruments, which order I would get them in, tips for making the best choice for your particular composing style if you have one, and which instruments I personally prioritise, which aren't necessarily the same as the aforementioned. This will be just my subjective opinions, and let's face it, you know I'm a little biased, but I have been doing this for over 14 years now. Yes, I'm old. So hopefully you'll find some of this information useful. And with all that preamble out the way, let's do a little window shopping together. Way back in my first ever Fracture Sounds video, I compared 5 piano libraries and showed how much of a difference it makes having them in context and how they create different moods and vibes. What I said back then still holds true, even with more additions to the lineup like Homestead piano. I better stop there because otherwise the copyright gods are going to be coming for us. But it's like choosing the right actor for a movie. And if you're someone who writes a variety of music, you'll probably find, when budget allows, that you'll want different pianos for different projects. Pianos vary so much, and when it comes to getting a virtual one, just like a real one, you want to choose one that's right for you. However, if I had to pick one single all-rounder, it would be Spotlight. It's like a breath of fresh air. I don't know what it is about this piano, but it's just like, I've never loaded this VST up and have it sound not good on me. It's always been like pleasant, even if it's maybe not right for a particular project. This one has a bunch of presets that you can choose to make it work for you in quite a variety of contexts, I think. And if you want more details about that, you can check out that piano video that I mentioned. We've also got Midnight Grand. Again, another grand piano, but just a very different feeling. And so on and so on. A Spotlight is a little more expensive than the others, but definitely the most versatile. Whichever you choose to get, chances are it's going to be a big step up from the piano included with your DAW. You can choose any one of these pianos from Fracture Sounds, and you know, thinking about your style of music, you can't really go wrong. The piano is a very ubiquitous instrument. Chances are most of us will be using one at some point. And if you're someone who writes for piano a lot, this is a no-brainer. But say you're someone out there who has only written for orchestral instruments, or you're now looking to expand your collection to have an addition to your piano. Let's move on and talk about the other instrument families. Much of what you choose to pick up depends on the style of music you write, and I'll talk about that more in a minute, but as someone who usually writes for a full orchestra, I found there is actually an order I'd recommend picking up virtual instruments in. And if I could go back 14 years and tell my younger self this, it might have saved me a bunch of headaches. And money. Firstly, if you have say £100 to spend on a sample library and you're debating whether to get a full package that has a whole orchestra in it, or to get a more focused specialised library that's sampling maybe just an individual instrument or an instrument section, chances are I would always recommend you go for the more specialised choice. Might seem counterintuitive, as you might be thinking, well, if I replace all my DAW instruments with better ones, that'll overall make everything sound better, right? And that is kind of true, but the thing I came to realise is that actually having just one or two VSTs that sound absolutely amazing does a better job of making a piece sound realistic than having every instrument replaced with one that only sounds slightly better. Good sounding sample libraries can do a really good job of hiding the weaker ones in your collection. A decent sounding piano can hide a weaker string section, good sounding string sections can hide bad woodwinds, good woodwinds can hide weaker brass, and so on. As a result, when you pick up your first sample libraries, I highly recommend thinking about how this order fits in with your particular composing style and what instrument you tend to gravitate towards using in your pieces. That said, if you, like me, know you're going to want everything at some point, here's what I'd recommend as a starting point. Go in the order of difficulty the instruments are to sample in the first place. Generally speaking, this is strings, then woodwinds, then brass, then finally percussion. And helpfully enough, this kind of tends to be the order in how much these instruments appear in the kind of music I think a lot of us and you guys out there write. So if you've got piano and strings, you are covered for so much of the film and TV music genre. So let's look at strings now. We have got quite a few options here. Now this, as I mentioned, is where your personal style of music becomes very important, because despite all of these being string libraries, they are providing very different characteristics, kind of like the pianos, but also kind of intended for different applications. So here I would suggest asking yourself, are you more of a melodic composer or a textural composer? Do you write for strings specifically, or are they usually an accompaniment, more of an ambient texture? I've always been someone who likes their Wagner-style leitmotifs, and I'm also a bit of a control freak, so I like having the ability to fine-tune every instrument from the ground up, perfecting each part as the piece progresses. So yes, for me personally, I usually gravitate towards legato libraries. I love these things. As of filming, Fracture Sounds haven't sampled a legato ensemble library yet. Could change in the future? Who knows? I mean, I wouldn't... Ow! 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 For the time being, if I wanted legato strings in an ensemble package, I would suggest putting soft string soloists on more of the room mics and then layering them on top of a polyphonic string section, like the ones included in Logic, or indeed Fracture Sounds Blueprint Gentle Strings. However, the legato libraries might not be the best choice for you, as there is a big disadvantage to this style of writing, which is, of course, time. You might not have the time to do all this faffing around to get it sounding good. If you're writing something for a quick turnaround, or you're on a time crunch, or on a project with a tight budget you can't sink that many hours into, trust me, we've all been there, fiddling around with legatos might not be the best choice. These libraries do have ensemble patches, which help a lot, but if you're writing something that's more textural, or say strings layered under piano, you might want to consider a library that is specialised for the intended purpose of creating good textural layers nice and quickly. These libraries, string formations, solo string formations, have this functionality in mind and are definitely worth considering if getting the ideas and feeling down quickly are more important to you than the nitty-gritty of programming individual layers and having strict control over everything. Flutters is such a good patch. Or heck, maybe not even piano and strings. Maybe you might even want something like this. So yeah, standalone string quartet pieces to go on an album or part of a larger ensemble, I would recommend going legato. For more ambient work, accompaniments that you might be writing quite quickly, say, or even library music, Fracture Sounds definitely has you covered for those. And the same is pretty much true for the other sections. In terms of realistic sounding legato samples, Emotive Woodwind Soloists is pretty hard to beat. I particularly love the additional articulations included in this library. I just think this makes it so versatile. I love these mordants and actually use this library in my big orchestral arrangements in lieu of ensemble woodwinds. When you put this library on the room mics, it's actually pretty hard to distinguish from a flute section, especially when there's loads of other stuff going on. However, again, if you're writing a piece for piano, strings and winds, and you're not too fussed about, or don't have time for writing each part individually, then Petrichor does make a wonderful accompaniment to the formation series. The smart trills function very similarly to the alternations patches in string formations. But we also have some more tense articulations in this one that make it more versatile if you're writing for a variety of moods, maybe for something darker. Nice. So that's a similar decision to make to the strings. Though I will mention at this point there is a substantial price difference between these two libraries. Both sound excellent, both will elevate your music substantially. Emotive Woodwind Soloists is arguably the more versatile, but again, you have the ease of use of petrichor and some delicious textures. Plus, it might leave you with some money left over to spend on something else. Speaking of which, yes, brass band soloists. As the name suggests, a bit more specialised, but if you're willing to put in a little bit of legwork, these instruments can be used in quite a few different contexts. For instance, if you add a bit of brightness to the soprano cornet, put it on non-vibrato, and then put it in the centre stereo mic position, I think this makes for a very convincing solo trumpet. I've already changed the reverb to shimmer. I'm just going to crank it up a bit for a bit more of a sort of two steps from hell vibe. Maybe a bit over the top there. I love to drench the euphonium in some reverb on centre stereo as well. It has a lovely kind of plaintive quality about it. Almost went down an octave then, but then remembered the euphonium doesn't go that low. And we've got the more recently added ensemble patch in this library also. Now, for me personally, especially with that euphonium, I would probably pick this up before Emotive Woodwind Soloists, but I understand that probably for a lot of people watching, it makes more sense to get a woodwind library first, especially given this is a brass band library, which obviously has a little bit of a different sound to more traditional orchestral brass instruments. Fracture Sounds doesn't have any orchestral brass libraries yet. Could change in the future. Ow, ow. Let's talk about percussion. I purposefully rate this the lowest priority of the orchestral families because unless you're doing some really percussion heavy taiko drum smacking beats all day every day, for the vast majority of cases, a lot of percussion is quite straightforward to record and consequently you'll be able to get away with using your DAW's inbuilt percussion libraries, or indeed sampling your own. For instance, here is an old djembe drum that I sampled years and years ago. This is like one of those ones that you buy at a jumble sale for £4 or something. It's not very good, but it is mine. Yeah, I've got like different samples at different pitches. Velocity sensitive, baby. Sorry, let me get it up on screen quickly for you. Mapping. Ooh, look how many samples I recorded. Oh, I got round robins. Yeah. Okay, so perhaps not the best. Here is a biscuit tin. How many round robins? So a round robin, for anybody that doesn't know, is like the same thing again. So like the same note or the same bit of percussion, just played at the exact same kind of velocity again, so that if you are playing something over and over again at the same velocity, it sounds different each time anyway. Do you necessarily need 10 when sampling a biscuit tin? Not necessarily. But again, like this is also pitch shifts up and down quite well. So up here, it makes like kind of an interesting sound. And then down here, it can be used as like an extra layer to make percussion a bit messier sounding. Maybe you don't have a microphone. I mean, that's fine. You should get a microphone, but if you don't have a microphone, there are things, you can get sounds off the internet, cut them down and sort of make them your own, and then make your own instruments. But if you don't have time necessarily to do all of that, well, Fracture Sounds has some options for you there as well. When it comes to percussion libraries, personally, I think it's all about the detail. And that's where I think Tom Factory is a bit of a cut above the rest. The crispiness of certain patches and like the detail you can hear in, like, for instance, in the hyped patch with clicks and clacks, listen to just how crispy these are. Ooh. Just the sheer versatility you get. So from that to like solo toms on the raw mix, close mic'd, all the way to the extra large mix with the ensemble stacking cranked all the way up on wide tom ensemble. So good. However, as I'm basing this video on the kind of more low-key composer that I had in mind at the beginning, I think an excellent match for a lot of the libraries mentioned hitherto is actually Zen Meditations. Oh yeah. This is more on the lively side of this library, but if we want ambient and textural percussion that fits a lot of what we've looked at so far, there is a plethora of stuff to choose from. I mean, for me, the chimes, these for me make a great alternative, like a more kind of gritty and interesting sound than using traditional instruments like the Soloists, for example. I'd say the same is true for so many of these instruments, just at different pitch ranges. But yeah, for me, this upper register it's a vastly underappreciated frequency in a lot of music, and used sparingly, it adds a real depth and like bit of dimensionality to a track, I think. But my personal favourite of the library is, and always will be, bamboo chimes. It's just so good. And with that, Zen leads us nicely onto the last set of sounds to talk about today. Arguably the most significant for Fracture Sounds, as it's what a lot of their libraries are known for. And that's the atmospheres. With the exception of the legatos and Tom Factory, every instrument you've heard today has had at least one or a combination of atmosphere layers which work in tandem with both the raw recordings and the reverb to create dreamy soundscapes and ambiences. Yeah, I figured I'd get a few layer blend patches up to show these off. If you'd like more details about the layer blends and how it works, you can find that in each library's respective walkthrough. But when it comes to comparing them between libraries, I like to think of it as ambient pads that kind of pick up the feeling and timbre of the original instruments. Trails is a bit of an oddball because Alexander Parsons is a bit of a synth geek, but if we listen to String Formation's layer blends, then solo string formations gives us a bit more definition from having fewer instruments. These patches are for those who prefer to write in a less conventional style, I'd say, and they're quite nice because they still capture the vibe of the instruments they're based on, whilst being less strictly traditional or arguably classical sounding. So say you do a lot of ambient work, both as background music or to accompany a piano piece, and you're looking for the maximum range of timbre and flexibility, look no further than orchestral atmospheres. And this is where I get to the sales money bit of the video, as Orchestral Atmospheres is available as a filming for free when you buy a bundle, that is, a set of sample libraries together from the Fracture Sounds website. Speaking as someone who always tries to buy things on sale, these do give you pretty good value for money, and if you know the kind of direction you want to go with your music production, it might be an idea to splash out. So if you're just getting into this delightful world of making music with the computer, have a think about the kind of composer you are and the kind of composer you want to be. If you don't know yet, no problem. There are free options out there that 14 years ago I would have quite happily paid good money for, so make use of those and just keep on composing until you do know. When you find yourself constantly in need of a certain sound and you know that having that sound is going to save you a bunch of hassle and pay itself back, either monetarily or through pure enjoyment and inspiration, that's when you know it's time to pick something up. For me, right now, I would go for the legato bundle, as that's the kind of composer I am, but even if that's not the kind of composer you are, I hope the information I've given in this video is useful. It's a good time to be a composer, I think, despite what everybody says. Technology is getting better and more compact, and companies like Fracture Sounds are making real headway in the sampling industry with features like Smart Legato, which make working with these libraries easier than ever before. The threat of AI looms ever closer, but provided we keep creating stuff that's better, stuff that makes us feel inspired, I think artists like us stand a chance of survival. And even on days when I'm not feeling quite so optimistic, in the words of the great Curtis Mayfield, we just keep on keeping on. And if you're not quite so optimistic, then let me know in the comments below. But either way, thank you very much for watching. Please consider subscribing to this YouTube channel for more videos, perhaps like this in the future, and I will see you when I see you. Goodbye.